The June 10th meeting of the Northampton Energy and Sustainability Commission uh, will open after we make a quorum call. So I will call the roll. Rachel Flynn-Kasuba,
Present.
Eric Winkler,
Present.
Richard Parsaliti.
Present.
Yeah, good. Counselor Clemmer,
Here.
Louis Hasbrook,
Here.
Ben Weil, also here. Carolyn Mish.
Present.
Okay, we are
In person.
present. I believe that means that we have no members of the public, right? So there is no reason for a public comment period. Shall we approve the minutes? Does anyone want to move?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Eric moves. I think it was Councilor Clemmer seconds. I'll call the roll again. Louis Hasbrook,
Yes.
Deb Clemmer,
Yes.
Eric Winkler,
In favor.
Carolyn Mish,
Yes.
Rachel Flynn-Kasuba,
Yes.
Richard Parsaliti,
Abstain.
and Ben Weil, yes. Okay, the minutes are approved. And our first agenda item is to introduce Hannah Davis, who is our energy advocate through the Community First Partnership.
Hello. Thank you so much, everybody, for having me here. I'm so excited to introduce myself. My name is Hannah Davis. I use they, them pronouns. I am the energy advisor for the cities of East Hampton and Northampton and the town of West Hampton. All three municipalities have partnered with the sponsors of Mass Save to bring energy saving opportunities to residents in the area, both renters and homeowners, through the Community First Partnership. So as part of that grant program, the three municipalities now share a regional energy advocate, that's me, who provides personalized one-on-one support to help all residents take full advantage of energy efficiency programs available. So nuts and bolts, what the program offers. The first step is to get a no-cost home energy assessment. Anyone who lives in a house is eligible for this. So renters, homeowners, landlords. It doesn't require landlord approval in order to get a no-cost home energy assessment. And from that assessment, various recommendations will result. Residents can get incentives for things like heat pumps, air sealing, weatherization, insulation, and then from there, it's kind of a choose your own adventure for how far you want to continue moving forward with the program. We're especially aiming to reach priority populations in all three municipalities, including renters, low and moderate income folks, and potentially small businesses and local nonprofits, but for now, primarily residential audiences. And I think that's the majority of it. If anyone is interested in getting a home energy assessment, if you haven't, or if it's been more than 3 years, we can sign you up at that link at massave.com/community-first/Hamptons, or that's my office phone number, 413-529-1400. My extension is 781. Please feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to answer any sort of questions, direct you to resources, act as sort of an energy concierge for the area. So thanks.
Thank you, Hannah. So I just thought it might make sense just to open it up to anybody to ask any questions or even make suggestions. So Eric.
Yeah, one quick question. I should know the answer to this. Are these incentives that the utilities offer available for new construction as well?
Yeah, I think it's dependent on the home energy assessment results. I would have you sign up for an assessment, and then from there, our home performance contractor partners can help you understand what your house might benefit from.
So for new construction, there is no home.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, so I think with new construction, there's much higher likelihood of those buildings already being insulated well and having a strong thermal envelope. But that's not to say that they can't take advantage of mass save incentives. I would have them reach out and I can connect them to the resources that they're interested in.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Yeah.
so I have a little more information on that, which gives us like, there we go. We have our first little agenda item that we need to actually work out ourselves. Is in fact, there is a new construction program that Mass Save offers, and the incentives are different and the requirements are different. It's like a different pathway. And we should have a really good answer on that. And I know for a fact that Mass Save has had a lot of difficulty communicating that to the building public and making sure that people actually take advantage of those resources. And it's illustrated here that I know it exists, and yet I can't tell you exactly what those resources are and how to get them. But so it's a really good point, Eric. More to say.
I do think I have it on our website. I know our website probably has too much stuff on it at the moment, and I'm working on it, and I'm open to feedback. But I do think I added a section, new construction, and it just like it's a link that just leads to the Mass Save new construction.
So, but I still think that what Eric brought up is a really good kind of to-do item for us, because we should be making sure that anytime somebody is submitting a building permit to the building department, I'll ask Louis if he thinks this is a good approach. There ought to be information available to make sure, are you actually taking advantage of all the Mass Save incentives that are available? And, just making sure they know.
What's happened in the past few years is that the energy design of a new house has gone to specialists. A regular contractor can't get through the process on his own through regulation and also through complexity. And most of them are pretty aware of it, but they're one step removed from our specific contacts. And but I have seen the rebate sheets that contractors have gotten, and there's certainly a pile of money for things like high efficiency ventilation systems and high SEER heat pumps, things like that.
So would you say it is a worthwhile thing for Kappa or for Hannah to kind of like make sure that communication information is happening through the building department, or should we be communicating a different way?
No, I think putting it out in the world, because I think the people that are out in the world are the ones that are going to drive the bus once.
Okay.
I mean, the contractors are getting all trying to have people back up on energy code stuff. So no, get it out there for the homeowners.
Okay.
I would just add, if code is not the highest efficiency that you can achieve, then the utilities with the $3 billion they collect in efficiency dollars should pay the delta between standard efficiency, which meets code, and super high efficiency. That is, I think I kind of answered my question myself, but I wanted to see how well that's advertised, because we want people to be higher than code. That's the way we get there. And in new construction, if you're just building ticky-tack houses that meet code, you're not necessarily pushing forward our goals. So,
Well,
more to come, eh?
Yeah, don't forget, Eric, that we've got a 2-year-old code that was already 2-year-old energy code that's already been revised once, and it's quite complicated. And it's getting to the point where we're talking 25% of the energy a house used in 2006, and that the next 10% is like buying a stereo. You can get a pretty nice stereo for not too much, but if you want the super deluxe version, you pay 10 times more. So we're in that threshold of tipping over towards the 10 times more to get one more step forward. But they're working on it. You can believe that they're out there thinking up better ways to save money all the time.
Rachel, it looks like your hand's up unless that is actually Hannah's hand.
That's mine. Thank you. I'm just wondering, sort of taking a step back, and because I know we talked about this broadly before you came on board, if either you or Ben could remind us, are there sort of specific tangible goals that we're trying to accomplish with this program and having you on board, and knowing also that you're only, one person split between 3 different towns, what this commission can do to kind of help you accelerate the work that you're doing, and how we can lean in.
Absolutely. I can take part of that question. I think we're still working on establishing numerical goals for benchmarks within each individual community. I think the areas where I could use the most assistance right now is your community knowledge for outreach, the kind of organizations we should be reaching out to, where to post flyers, who to be talking to, what events to be tabling at that get the most interest for these sorts of things. And then sending leads my way if and when you hear about people who are interested in home energy assessments.
Go ahead, Ben. I wasn't sure if you wanted to jump in there.
I mean, I agree that we don't have a good numerical goals set yet. My interest in kind of how we wrote up the grant was to devote as much as possible of Hannah's time to reaching landlords, who are harder to persuade, and their buildings are often kind of not your standard mass save offering, but that once they've invested in the program, that once they take advantage of the resources, the benefits flow to a large number of people. So that's still a goal, and any help figuring out who are the right people, the right landlords, the right, in many cases, absentee corporations to reach out to, that's certainly helpful to us. Deb.
Yeah, this isn't for landlords, but just to reach people, the city sends out a newsletter every month. So it'd be good to have a little section on that where you just introduce yourself and you could talk about the program a little bit. And I would reach out to Alan Wolf about that in the mayor's office.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I actually already submitted a blurb to that newsletter, and you'll be
Okay.
seeing it, I think, at the end of this month or in July.
Oh, great.
And if there's a blurb that same blurb maybe that you'd be comfortable sharing with us. I live in the South Street neighborhood area, and we have a very active community listserv. But in general, I'm sure folks could send that out to other. Awesome.
Great. And I send out a newsletter every month too, and it gets a lot of listservs and more too. So I'd be happy to add that to it. If you want to just send something out to all of us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'll follow up with the blurb after we finish the meeting.
Yeah, thanks. And in fact, it's I think the case that maybe all of the city councilors have newsletters or some sort of communication. Maybe not all, but I think I know mine does.
Just a few, a couple.
And I know that so I know Deb does. I know that Rachel Maori does. Alex Jarrett does.
Yeah, Rachel's are really intermittent and not.
That's true.
As mine.
That's true.
The ward counselors tend to have them. It's a little tougher at large.
Oh, right. Right.
I have thought about just stealing Stan's and Alex, as a general rule. Deb's is good too.
Thanks.
Eric.
Yeah, I will make one suggestion for you in your endeavors to push this thing forward. I imagine that folks can be confused about all the different mass save solicitations that they receive in the mail. That there are multiple entities that are offering services under the mass save program. Nothing wrong with any of them. I'm not saying that. I just think that it would be interesting to, and I think probably helpful to unify the message about access to mass save, so that if there are, if there are multiple vendors doing this, then who do you go with? And some people can be paralyzed if they have to actually choose one over another because they don't know how. So as you start your process to do a better job of rolling this out, I think that's one area that could be helpful, is to, I'm not saying there should just only be one vendor. I'm just saying there should be one sort of clear communication about how folks can move forward with any potential mass save vendor. And there are a lot of them. Just a thought.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that. We actually have a preferred home performance contractor, Revise, who we're currently working with. We've been in touch with them and are coordinating our outreach effort to spread the word more broadly between everyone in our contact list, between the cities and Revise's contact list. And we'll be tabling together at events moving forward.
Louis?
I wonder what sort of relationship the contractors have with National Grid. Are they vetted? Are they followed? I just have ran into one last week or the week before for commercial work, and I couldn't tell. And I asked a few questions and I didn't get a really definitive answer. So I'm not sure.
So I can answer that one just because I used to work in the MaxSave program. So basically each PA at each utility runs the MassSave program in their territory. And in our territory, we have National Grid and Eversource, basically whichever one provides your heating. So Eversource still runs, is the main one that runs MassSave if you're getting gas, if you have gas, if you have any other fuel source, it's National Grid in Northampton. All of the home performance contractors that are licensed, associated with MassSave are able to offer those incentives, et cetera, have had kind of the same training and offer the same measures, energy efficient measures that are like approved by MassSave. That said, there's still a good deal of variation, both in terms of quality and how those measures are actually implemented versus how they were originally designed, which is, frustrating, right? Because that's you're counting on the level of vetting. They do have to kind of pass certain kind of qualification tests, and most of them have like all the appropriate licensing and all that stuff. So it's better than some of the kind of fly-by-night insulators who might be not mass save qualified, and might be not using the most current techniques. I mean, in particular, that's the case with, again, just going from my own experience, fill insulation into walls. There's an old technology that would basically drill and then you stick kind of the hose right at the wall and you get these little balls of cellulose that wouldn't fully fill the cavity. And properly trained, you actually put a fill tube all the way down the cavity and back it out, and it's dense packed to 3.5 pounds per cubic foot, et cetera. So there is some level of quality assurance that comes with being mass save associated. In the case of Revise, the reason they're our preferred home performance contractor is because parallel to, and I guess working with this community first partnership is the Electrify East Hampton Northampton program, which is funded basically from a lawsuit against Eversource that Mass CEC runs. And so Mass CEC went through a process of vetting contractors, and Revise got that contract. So there's a certain level of assurance based on Mass CEC having done the work for us to vet them. And then since they're already here, since they already have access to that money, we wanted to make sure that the same entity was bringing that access to all of our residents. Long answer, I guess.
That's what I wanted to hear, so, or most of what I wanted to hear.
I might just chime in a little bit. So if you get the energy, like the audit through Mass Save, like Ben mentioned, like Mass Save has a list of contractors that are approved. And if you like decide to get a heat pump, like you can't really get the rebate, like the $10,000 rebate. You can't even get that if you choose a contractor that's not on that list. So there are, ways to go through this. But yeah, I think it's just important to look at that list that Mass Save provides. Yeah.
So Eric raised this question about essentially about marketing, how to create a coherent brand strategy. And so I think this is a question that's more of like, I guess, advice question, which is, would it make sense to really put the imprimatur of the city on communications coming from Hannah? Like actually have like the city seal, say this is, like the city is endorsing this approach, and go to this website that happens to be masssave.com/community first, etc. So one, is that problematic? And two, is that helpful, or does that scare more people away?
I can actually weigh in very quickly before anyone else answers. A lot of the materials that are provided by the Community First Partnership already have the seal of Northampton, East Hampton, and West Hampton on them. That includes things like postcard mailers, flyers, various marketing and outreach materials that are pre-supplied by the grantor.
Which I think I knew. So given that, like, would that help you, Eric? Like, if you knew that, like, you're getting a bunch of communications, because you get, I mean, if you're like me, you're getting something every few weeks in the mail from somebody saying, get your Mass Save thingy, whatever. And it's got the Mass Save logo. They're all pitching you, and you don't know who to go to. Would it make a difference if the communication actually also says your city's endorsing this approach?
It depends. I mean, it depends on what the individual's relationship is with government and whether they trust anybody. But I think if the city says we're endorsing this, we support this, then I think it adds some higher level of credibility. Not that the city is necessarily guaranteeing that the provider has there's no guarantee from the city that the provider is going to I don't know, be any better than anybody else. I don't know how to say that, but I do think it creates a clearer communication so folks aren't confused and don't get overwhelmed, because I would say I've received, in the last 6 months, I've received 4 or 5 solicitations from different providers, trying to do it. They can easily market themselves that way by figuring out customer names and addresses and assuming they have gas or electric service. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a right answer to that. I just think that it would be helpful to have a more unified message, so that when people are considering doing an assessment and then going forward with construction, that they don't become paralyzed by the prospect of trying to pick the right provider. It can be difficult.
Well, let me ask a next level question then, which is, what if the communications that might come from Hannah, that might come from Revise, indicated that if you're, you know, in our area and you get a quote and you would like an independent person to help you think it through, and you know that we can hook you up with someone who will help you. Well, it's an energy coach. So we have volunteers. They've presented themselves as you know, in public comment period, and you know, from the public, who are interested in essentially acting as energy coaches. Some of them have been trained through Energize Mass, and you know, I guess would it make sense to say, you know, you may have no problem at all. Don't ask for help if you don't need help. But if you feel like you want an additional person to help you look through this who kind of knows the system, we can hook you up.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is that as long as it doesn't violate some state law about the city putting forward that option, absolutely. I mean, why wouldn't somebody take advantage of getting some advice from somebody that can independently recommend a path going forward? And it doesn't have to be with our preferred, you know, it doesn't have the preferred provider list doesn't have to be one company. It can be many companies. So yeah, I just, like I said, I think when you have to shop around, you can actually stop the process. So if there's a way to facilitate that, then we can get better penetration of these programs. These programs, I mean, if you just let people know how much of their electric bill they're paying in conservation charges, they'll be shocked and upset with themselves that they haven't taken advantage of this. These charges are $10, $15, $25 a month, and people don't take advantage of them. Why? It's just, I mean, somebody's taking advantage of it. It's a socialized program, but you know, we want the utilities to spend their money on people in our communities to go above and beyond where they're at. So if we can help facilitate that, take away the confusion and pressure of having to decide, then that would be great.
Louis?
I wonder how much Hannah can do in this scenario for us, because I mean, I have some cautions. I know for sure that the building department has to be very, very careful. We can't recommend anybody. We can provide names, but and you know, sometimes there's a nod or a wink, but it starts to get awfully confusing and pretty delicate. So I'm wondering if somebody who's more charged with this aspect of it could talk about how to promote going forward without running afoul of the sort of the conflict of interest and the appearance of conflict of interest and stuff like that. I mean, the idea is that you're going to probably have a contractor that you think does a great job, and you've developed a relationship with them, and that's the person you would want to recommend, and you're already pretty close to a conflict of interest with it. So Hannah, what maybe could you do?
Yeah, I think that's something that we're still figuring out on our end too. We've been working with the grant administrator, All in Energy, to sort of delineate the responsibilities of everyone who's involved in getting this program rolling. I know that Revise is our preferred home performance contractor. We have a memorandum of understanding with them. They are the people who receive the leads that we generate when we send out the form that is linked at that masssave.com link on that slide. much beyond that, I'm not sure how the other home performance contractors play into this.
I think there's a great opportunity for the city to just actually sort of lean into the simplification and create some urgency around it, right? Like I think we'd all agree there's no lack of information that's out there somewhere, somehow by lots of different entities, but for the city to say, look, Mass Save has this money available. The city's doubling down on it. We've endorsed Revise. They can help streamline the process. We're here to talk to you. And by the way, we're going to create some urgency by saying by the end of the summer or by the end of September, reach out to us because X is going to happen, even if it's a bit, performative, just do it by the end of summer because, you have more free time, whatever the case is. And just say like, we're going to consolidate all the stuff. We made it super simple. We're doubling down and see if we can create that urgency. Because right now, these programs have been available forever. There's been money available forever. Clearly, our target market isn't moving. And if we can focus in on who those people are and why and target them with this sense of urgency, now that, using you here as the impetus, I think that might unlock some more than just trying to recreate information that's already out there and, put it out to different groups.
Louis again.
I had a quick question. We had talked years ago about neighborhoods because certain neighborhoods tend to have similar dwellings in it. We talked a lot about the Ryan Road neighborhood because it's a lot of 24 by 36 ranch houses with electric heat and inadequate insulation. I wonder if you had the idea, is there a database that would tell us what percentage of houses in that neighborhood got done?
So yeah, I've been working on assembling data to both understand the residents of Northampton, Easthampton, and Westhampton who have already taken Mass Save up on their offerings, and then who is left, who's still on fossil fuel energy, and how we target them. So we just received an email from our project partner, Haven, who is the coordinator on the grant administration side, saying that she would put us in contact with Mass Save this week. I don't have the email in front of me. I can't remember her exact wording, but she's helping us find that information from the Mass Save side. As for finding folks who haven't already taken up Mass Save on these offerings or who rather are still on fossil fuel, the assessor's database has information on residences in Northampton that are still on fossil fuel energy sources. And I've been in contact with the Northampton Assessor's Office. We're working on compiling that database as we speak.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything on this topic? Or do we feel like we're introduced? All right, if that's okay with everyone, then I would suggest that we move on to the next agenda item, which is approval of the decarbonization master plan, which Gabi shared with you all by email. I hope some of you had a chance to look at it. And I can go over it a bit if you find that helpful, or I can describe to you kind of what I'm hoping we get out of it, or what I think its utility is. So I guess I'll start with that, and then we can ask questions. And if it's necessary to go over the document, I'll share the document. And we'll look at that. So it is a very high level prioritization of buildings. It says these are the municipal properties. These are the ones that are emitting a lot of carbon, using a lot of energy. These so addressing them has a big result, and then there are some others that addressing them has a smaller result. It goes into most of the buildings, a really good percentage of the total fleet of buildings that the city owns, and comes up with more specific recommendations and a rough timeline of kind of what order you might do the different interventions, which invariably are something like weatherization and envelope measures, addressing ventilation, heat pumps of some kind, and then domestic hot water and cooking electrification. So basically, those basic categories, and it lists what, in some cases, what types of equipment would be useful. One thing I do think is good about the way that they produced this was they recognized that the technology is changing relatively quickly. And so any particular technology that they recommended is going to be out of date by the time we actually get around to trying to to do whichever project it is. Although the general concepts of the technologies are probably pretty well established at this point. So that's kind of what it does for us. I think it gives us again, a very high level set of moves to do with each different type of building. And then, so from my perspective, the most important function of this report is that we can use it to apply for the climate leaders designation with Mass DOER, which makes a larger grant size available to us to actually do these projects. So that's my main motivation. I think it's fair to say that almost nothing will be actually accomplished in the exact way that they describe it in these plans. The plan is great until the first shot is fired, I think is a military analogy. But so that's where I think it is. It does give us kind of a dose of reality in terms of when we say zero carbon or decarbonization, and it kind of gives us a timeline. It's like, well, even once you've electrified, you still have to coast down that carbon slide with the rest of the grid unless you're doing something else. And that makes the timeline that we have kind of internally imposed for municipal operations. It means we either need to look at our definitions of decarbonization, or potentially revisit kind of really what we think is realistic for actual decarbonization of municipal operations. So that's what I think are the main things about it. So open for discussion, and I can kind of bring the document up if that's helpful. Yes, Eric.
Yeah, so I'll try and be brief, which isn't my strong suit. So what I noticed that was notably absent in the report, and I think tracks well with the observations that they made about the dependency upon the carbon emissions from the electric grid. That is, that it's almost full electrification to remove all fossil fuels, which means two things. One, we continue to rely on the carbon emissions levels that are in the bulk power system, or we develop our own renewable generation, zero carbon generation. Maybe we'll get a small nuclear power plant for the city. I say that tongue in cheek, but time will tell.
Permitting is hard.
What I wanted to share with the group was an observation I had, which was that something was lacking in the report that that should have come from this clear condition, which is that we're going to be dependent upon the carbon emissions from the bulk power system, at least for a big chunk of our supply. So what's missing is demand response. And this is maybe slightly esoteric, but there's well over 3 gigawatts of demand response in New England, which is basically active direct load control. So on certain conditions, whether it's a system emergency or an individual entity's desire to avoid peak demand charges, they can control their load. You can shut your lights off. You can turn compressors off, leave the fans running, but turn a compressor off in a cooling system, and reduce load. And why I say that is because in New England, we have a gas-centric power generation system, and it's going to be gas-centric for quite some time. We don't have coal left. I don't believe there's any coal plants left. But that being said, and I work for the grid, so I know this personally, gas supply in New England is a limited resource. We are the end of the pipeline. There are other sources of gas through vis-a-vis the LNG. I think there are 2 LNG facilities in New England, large facilities. LNG is not cheap, and on a global scale, there's a lot of competition for LNG. So what happens when there's a shortage supply of gas is that oil-fired plants are operated. These are dirty plants. Not only are they utilized, they're actually incentivized. In New England, for the last several years, the New England power grid has made an effort to ensure that power generation that has dual fuel capability maintains a supply of storable fuel, and that's oil. Natural gas is not storable to any great extent. There is supply stored in New England, but in a winter peak, natural gas goes to heating homes. Natural gas does not go to power plants. Therefore, those power plants switch from natural gas to burning oil. And I don't know how, I haven't tracked this more recently, but probably at least 3 or 4 years ago, I can recall that in our winter reliability program, the environmental agency in Massachusetts was awfully disappointed on our greenhouse gas emissions because it was actually worse than it's ever been because we were using fossil fuels. So I'll try and close this out. One of the things that we can do as a city is consider when we use electricity. And during peak demand in the summer, it's less of an issue because natural gas is plentiful in the summer, right? You're not heating with natural gas, so homes are not using natural gas that would run gas plants. But in the wintertime, that's when natural gas becomes short in supply, and power plants are going to potentially use a much dirtier fuel. So here's my message. We should explore what the potential is for doing active load control in our city buildings. We can go out and find a provider that does this kind of work and get recommendations on what might be controlled.
And then if we use the people
and think about that, because if in the wintertime, in particular in the wintertime, if we do active load control and do peak load reduction, then we can capture or get value from reducing the amount of fossil fuels that are being used, the dirty fossil fuels certainly, that are being used to
Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I guess just that one. That's the other.
I don't know if that's me.
Yeah. I just cranked it up a little bit.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
All right, now let me just do the final test.
and the only thing I'll
Wrote it down here.
from a value perspective,
Yeah. I have an almost 9-year-old, so that is no.
It's in this.
But she has better handwriting.
This is
Yeah,
fascinating.
Was she the one with the emergency?
Yeah,
Does
Eric-
anyone in
Shit.
the room know how to
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, of course.
deal
I
with this?
mean, sometimes.
Coming through the ceiling.
Emergency.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
must
they-
be the wireless microphones are picking up somebody else.
Cool.
I know the
Some
game.
kind of
Wireless.
meeting
What do you do?
Happened once
Make
before.
sure they
but I
don't Killed
Okay.
itself.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say, so
That's
there's a
awesome.
possibility
Like
of
at school or,
No, just independently.
oh,
Like,
that's great.
yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so Eric, we can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
We can
Sorry.
only hear our intruders. If everybody in that room is actually on a computer, we could actually shut down the room and go to actually Zoom
I'll get you in here.
and then maybe because it's clearly like something to do with the system and we don't have any control over that.
Okay. Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we
Great.
can hear you too.
Going to council chambers? Or, I mean,
Okay. And this is the official meeting link, right?
Can I
Yeah.
put
Yes.
the,
Yeah, there's already people trying to enter, but I'm gonna
can I
wait
put
till
the reparations
here
meeting
gets
on
here
our-
and yeah. Obviously.
I think it happened at the last meeting that we had. Is that room's probably locked, right, Marissa?
Yeah, it's well.
I have keys to it, but it's upstairs.
I mean, it got quiet now. Well, while it's quiet, I'm going to answer Eric because yesterday we passed our demand response test from that was operated. So every summer, basically, so we have enrolled our larger accounts, our G3 accounts, the big ones, in demand response programs. We get paid for.
We're gonna have a summer machine.
The high school in JFK. We did not manage to get
Warm and
Smith
muggy now outside.
under control
since-
because that's a bigger and more difficult project that is just a different challenge. But JFK and the high school, we got our demand response request, and we have basically all of these buildings, these large buildings, have building management system, right? So it's kind of like all the different things are controlled. And we basically, right now, we have to do it the manual and slow way, but I have, hopefully within a month, I should have an easy button in each of the open screens of these BMSs where we get a call and we can just kind of hit the easy button and they go into load shed mode. Now that's for summer, and I recognize that you're not as interested in that. So if you think about when winter peaks will happen, especially on non-residential buildings, right? So most of these schools and that sort of stuff, it's early morning as you're warming the building up, and it's coldest outside already, and you've probably let that drift. So one of the things we are actually experimenting with, even though in some of these cases they're still using gas for heat, is that we're doing slow, longer warm-up periods to basically lower the power required to bring the buildings up to occupied temperature by opening, by when they go into occupied mode. In the case of the senior center, where we actually have a ground source heat pump and it's all electric, we're actually using the thermal mass of the floor as basically a giant thermal battery. And so we're pretty dramatically lowering the peak loads from that facility by basically just kind of keeping that floor at a constant. So we are working on that stuff, and as things get electrified, hopefully we'll be able to do more. We probably ought to be including things like large thermal storage, in hot water, domestic hot water that we can control. And we do have a grant application. We'll see if we get it to be able to implement that at Smith Voc. Yeah.
Let me I just want to clarify because I
Mhm.
keeps my brain active. The current, it depends, the demand response program that you're talking about, I don't know what demand response program you're considering, but I will tell you that there's two approaches to demand response. Well, there's actually three approaches.
Yeah.
Price. And the New England the New England market for load control on the wholesale level is economic. That it is a bid price for energy, and if that strike price is met, then the demand response provider needs to provide load reduction. It's not emergency conditions, although they are somewhat correlated. That is, that as conditions become more shortage of events, a price goes up, price strike of the price and the activation. The emergency program is no longer activated in New England at the wholesale level, but the utilities have programs for commercial and I believe residential programs now. So I don't know where you are, but what I'm talking about is actually chasing the peak. And smart energy managers are chasing the peak because they get a value from doing peak load reduction on their demand charges, which can be a significant part of a bill. But
So that's different.
as I think about the greenhouse gas emissions, then if we chase the peak, this requires a much more hands-on approach. Somebody needs to look at the system to see where we are on power plants being dispatched and chasing that to capture the greenhouse gas emissions. And how you calculate it, I think you'd have to do it retrospectively to figure out sort of what power plants were activated at that time. And I know there are people at the ISO that actually do that. But anyway, I don't want to beat this one to death. I just do that. And I'm glad to hear that the city is participating in some load control because it is a valuable, it's a valuable economic program, creating additional value in the city's consumption. So, okay, I'll stop.
So to get back to the point, which is about getting us to the point where we can vote to adopt this plan. Yes, they did not address, they addressed energy, not power. And to some degree. And so we are going to, in fact, we do have a pretty strong plan. So like, and I won't go into all the details, but yes, there's multiple levels of participation in a variety of different programs. In our case, Sea Power is our provider who's kind of doing that for us. But that's how we're going to get control of the load and control peak load. But in terms of this plan, it's more about what investments are you going to make that are going to reduce your overall carbon emissions, given that they are not taking into account the grid effects of our individual actions, but more what's the grid doing on an annual basis. So I'd say point well taken, and we're working on it, and it's not in the plan for probably just kind of practical reasons, like it'd be very hard to measure. Anybody else want to have anything to discuss on this plan?
I'll just add one more comment because I did spend a little time on it. I don't think we should underestimate or take for granted the notion that we can do more self-supply. Relying on the grid, I think in the short term, the federal approach towards renewables is not helpful to large scale zero emission generation. And so I think part of this plan should in fact continue to emphasize self-generation, whether it's residential rooftop and or municipal, small scale. We don't have, I guess I didn't look deep enough into this about what the potential is for renewables in the city and city-owned property, but clearly self-generation is the way that we can make a bigger impact on the greenhouse gas emissions from the electric supply that we're going to continue to need.
Right. So they did estimate the PV potential on the buildings that we have, and that reduces our carbon emission. So like the investments in the buildings themselves, and then the production gets us a lot closer but it's still not zero. And which is, I mean, that's what you would expect. But let me see if if I shared my screen, I can kind of show the uh, basic takeaway from that. Oh, it looks like Gabi, maybe you have to turn sharing on. Let's see now. If I can
You should be all set now.
Okay. Um, so so this is kind of where they kind of estimate what's the practical amount of solar PV that you could add. Um, about 41% of our electric use would come from there. So it's significant, right? And of course, as the grid gets greener, the special greenness of solar decreases, right? So by 2050, if the grid is really pretty clean, we're just contributing to more solar power. Their plan did not consider a project that actually Carolyn initiated, and I kind of picked up from her, which is a resilience installation at Smith Voke that would put PV on all their roofs. They've got a fair amount of roof surface area and a big battery that would allow them to basically be off grid for, I think it was 72 hours. And meanwhile, that battery during normal situations could be acting to do grid arbitrage and basically discharge into the grid at peak demand hours, which are usually after the peak solar production. So so we have some plans for that, and that solar part was accounted for in this plan, but there's no battery accounted for, and of course we haven't built any of it. So I don't know if that helps think about kind of what they considered to be practical in terms of solar potential on the roofs that we have. Okay, so any other discussion?
I just had a question. Maybe this is a little naive, but how does or does any purchase that we do through our CCA, like targeted for, like, let's say we get a local solar array to be sort of the power for the CCA, would that count towards local generation?
I mean, it would be local because it's
Yeah.
local, but the city doesn't actually purchase its electricity through the CCA. We get a better deal.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and
It was really more for, okay.
now I would say, right, I think it's totally possible that if in the future the CCA, like say owned some sort of power production or somehow invested in a solar and battery installation somewhere, and we could justify having the city get their electricity through the CCA because it was the best deal or something like that, then I would think that would actually be fundamentally different. Right now, the city basically does not pay a premium for renewables. We actually get a good deal by subscribing to community solar for both at the Amoresco operated field, which is on our old landfill, and at Spencer Meadow, which is a really large solar field out in Spencer. And we basically pay like 70 cents on the dollar for credits from those solar production. That's again municipal electric bills. And if you're in the CCA, if you're in Valley Green Energy, and you're choosing to get additional renewable energy credits, those are credits where you're retiring RECs, renewable energy credits, and you're actually paying for those. Like, so you're buying them. So your price, instead of being 13 cents a kilowatt hour, is, if it's your 10%, it's like 13 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And if you were 100% green, it's like 16 something cents per kilowatt hour. But it's pretty arguable whether that's actually, I mean, it's not actual renewable energy running into your appliance. It's a credit that you've retired.
Okay, thanks.
If there's no further discussion, would anyone like to suggest that we vote to adopt this plan?
So them. Oh, go ahead.
So moved.
Yeah, seconded.
So let's see. Rachel seconded. I actually didn't see who moved.
Marissa.
Marissa. Okay, great. So Marissa moved. Rachel seconded. Discussion. Eric.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Fair enough.
What does that mean to adopt?
Well, I think that's a fair question. I would say that it means that we feel that this represents a realistic pathway for the city, and that it has the legitimacy that we've approved it as a guidance document.
I can offer a little more on that.
Okay, good.
Thanks. Well, so the Energy and Sustainability Commission is a commission of the mayor. So we are essentially policy advisors to the mayor. So when we put a stamp of approval on something like this, then we're essentially forwarding it to the mayor to do with what she will. Future administrations, future mayors can disregard, don't have to do it, but this mayor is, we're sending up basically a policy stamp of approval is essentially what we're doing.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Do we anticipate that she will do something with this plan now? Has there been other discussion you can share in terms of, has she been looking for it and this is sort of long coming, or we're initiating this without much context from her, or like, what do we think the next steps would be?
In my
So she knows it's coming. And when I was hired, I said, like, our first thing is we ought to have a plan so we know basically an assessment of what we've got and what are reasonable pathways for what we've got. And I don't think any of these plans are binding, right? So it's more of just that I feel like it's really a sense of somebody has looked at this, it represents something reasonable. When we have questions about these buildings and we're about to do something, we should at least look at this plan and see if it gives us good ideas. Beyond that, I don't know that it does that much. Okay, Louis, Deb, and then Eric.
Is it fair to say that this is a framework that we're putting forward and that we're going to work inside this framework until it either succeeds or becomes clear that it's not going to succeed and we have to change it? But the idea that we're putting this out as our first steps, and we may not follow it to the end, but we're going to follow it a ways. Does that seem?
That seems like a
reasonable
reasonable
approach?
description to me. Deb?
Yeah, I mean, if for nothing else, I think it's great that we now have an overview of all the buildings that we can upgrade and how much work it will be in each one and the sizes and, really thorough assessment of them. But it seems like it's not very realistic to have the goal for 2030 like we originally thought. And I mean, right now it's only 4.5 years away, which is hard to believe. So, I mean, it sounds like it will be pushed back to 2040 but keep chipping away at it. We're not just going to stand still. So, yeah, I mean, I think you did a great job just laying everything out so we know what we're dealing with now.
Eric?
Yeah, I think along the lines of what Louis said, I have concern that the report says we're not going to meet the goals. And I'm not sure this commission should be endorsing not meeting the goals. I think that it's important that we suggest that the document helps as a guide and a framework for moving forward to achieve the goals. But I would be concerned about voting for something that says we're not going to achieve our goals, and that's what we're following. I mean, I think if anything, this report should be an impetus to do more research to figure out how we're going to reach these goals at the time in the time frames that we're trying to reach them, and or revisit. We need to revisit the goals, because if the goals can't be achieved, then we need to restate them. I wouldn't necessarily want to endorse a document that restates our goals for us. I think we should be the ones doing that, not the consultants.
Can I pipe in? I think there's a lot of use in a reality-based report that so I don't think this is an endorsement of missing the goal. It is an assessment of whether or not our best, most aggressive measures are going to get us there, because there are other considerations that there are other unknowns out there that could take place. Things like changes in our school buildings, or the footprint of our schools is a big one, and that's something that the strategic plan and school committee and working groups following the strategic plan, the Northampton Public School strategic plan is looking at. So this is a report. And this is our best educated guess about whether or not we're going to reach those goals. I don't think it's an endorsement or resetting of the goals. And frankly, for what it's worth, the 2030 goal is the mayor's goal. It's the administration. And to the extent we support it, we support those goals. We certainly can endorse that as a goal. But I think she's also looking to this commission and to Ben for input about whether or not it's achievable. So I don't know. I wouldn't look at it as an endorsement of changing the goalposts. It's an indication that there's more work to do and that we will need to be more aggressive to meet them. So.
I mean, if it helps, I think we could in our vote, we could specify that we're not changing the city's adopted goal to have our buildings carbon neutral by 2030, but we will use this report as action steps toward achieving ultimately decarbonization to the extent that we can. I mean, I was going to say this anyway, but as sort of context, this is a deeper dive into the buildings piece of it that was just sort of cursorily reviewed as part of the climate resilience and regeneration plan that was adopted by the city that had that goal of 2030 for buildings. And so this is sort of that next detailed step of, okay, we said this is our goal. How are we going to get there? And what are the details? So I think, I think we can sort of do both and say, we're not changing the goal. We're just being realistic about how it's possible to work on that.
Rachel?
Thanks. So I was going to ask for more context on just what are we setting ourselves up for by approving this. And I think that covers it, which is it doesn't necessarily say we're endorsing a different goal. It says we need to be realistic about how to actually get there. And in order to do that, we need a plan, and we can start chipping away at all of these things in conjunction with other things that might help us accelerate the plan. So I think if that's the context, then I definitely support. It also sounds like, Ben, there's a very acute use of this plan, which is to apply for grant funding at a larger amount, which I think you started the conversation off with, and seems to make 100% sense for us to approve as soon as possible. So if that's the case, then yes, still support. If, to Eric's point, if we're shifting this, and I think there might be a good broader conversation for this group about, okay, what is that? Or maybe I missed the context prior to joining. What is the city overall approved, and what's the plan, and how do we kind of push for accelerated decarbonization action as quickly as possible? I would love to have that conversation again as this group. But I think that feels separate than this very tactical, acute approval of the plan.
Eric?
So I'll go back to my first question. What are we voting? What are we voting for? I mean, Caroline made, if we can extract Caroline's words into what we're voting for, I would be in favor of that. I'm not sure I want to vote for the report I'm happy to vote to accept the report. But I guess I just don't know what that means.
I think you're right to point that Carolyn's beginning to put together a phrasing is probably what we would want to vote on, is a statement, something similar to what Carolyn just said. Carolyn, would you have any interest in stating it again?
What was that? This committee, this commission can vote to adopt this report as a path forward to making our buildings, towards carbon neutrality, while not changing the overall goal of trying to reach that in 2030.
So that's the amended language.
Would that work for you, Eric?
It would. I think it's to me it's more meaningful.
Right. I'm glad.
So
yeah.
I move that we adopt Carolyn's language to be the language around what we're voting for.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment. We don't need to vote on
it. Can you help explain that one to me? I don't know what that means.
Because technically, if there's a motion to amend the motion on the floor, then we have to vote on the amendment. But I'm happy to adopt that as to the motion that I made to approve, and I would accept as a friendly amendment the Carolyn's language.
I see. So that means that someone would second what Eric just said, and then we'd vote on that?
It's already been seconded. I think we can just vote.
Oh, okay. In that case, I'll call the roll. Oh, no, Louis.
Yes.
Oh, Louis is raising his hand. Yes, okay. Deb Clemmer.
Yes.
Richard Parsley.
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes.
Carolyn.
Yes.
Marissa Elkins.
Yes.
So it passes. Thank you guys very much.
You want me to vote?
Say it again. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric.
In favor.
Great. So that, I believe, is unanimous, and we have a record of all that. Okay, so that was, honestly, that was the main agenda item that I was worried about, as Rachel pointed out strategically. I want the money.
Can I say, just good work, Ben and Gabi, on moving this forward, and everybody else involved. I imagine, I know it was a lot of effort, and it sounds like it will make a difference. So I know the work behind the scenes. So good job.
So now the only agenda left is department head updates. And Rich, you're not always here, so I'd love to know if you have anything to share.
I'm not prepared to give a statement, but it's been a very busy, for me personally, it's been a very busy couple of weeks. And of course, the department is actively pursuing, I mean, you probably see our crew around everywhere doing potholes. There's a lot of operational challenges right now, trying to get street sweeping done, pothole repair. We're obviously under the gun weather-wise, so anything that's outside is weather dependent. The upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant continue to progress, which is a good thing. I've been down there a few times to visit Ray and Dale with Donna. Um, I don't really have any other operational details to share with you other than we're moving along the best that we can given our constraints. So for folks that are um, have any issues, they can always contact the department and we can take your request. But it's been an interesting spring. So
Yeah.
it's been good though.
Cool. It's good to see you. Louis, do you have anything you want to share?
No, well, just that and I hate to harp on it, but the energy code is taking up a fair amount of our time, and it's beginning to wish I had passed advanced calculus when I was in college. Do you realize that you actually need to use advanced calculus to figure out how to make a house pass energy code?
I did not know that.
I would just say that I think in general, I wish I paid more attention in school when I was younger, now that I'm older, because it's not the current learning curve now is a little more difficult.
Isn't that what
Do-
Chat GBT is for?
Yeah, but
Yeah, except it's wrong. Usually and as soon as the math gets challenging, it's usually really, really wrong because it learned from other stupid humans. Um, but what I can say, Louis, is I did a fair amount of advanced calculus and I can't remember any of the useful stuff. So yeah. Carolyn, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I'm out. I don't. I'm sorry.
So no, Gabi and I brainstormed a bunch of things that I was supposed to share. The thing that's most on my mind is the frustration with the DC fast charger installation that we had hoped to actually be starting today. But the contractor didn't pull the right permits, which actually was fortunate that it all came to our attention, really thanks to Cindy Quinn, because there's hopefully no conflict with the Superfund characteristic of the roundhouse lot, and that there will be a way to bury the conduit the right way. But that's not finalized yet. So obviously there's a bit of back to the drawing board. There's a conflict with one of the trees, and we basically don't want to cut down a tree. So we're gonna have to maybe go back to the drawing board on locations and placement and perhaps even equipment type for these fast chargers. So stuff that honestly we should have done better on the planning and got really, really far down the line before we understood all the things that were going to get in our way. And we still need these fast chargers in order for the 4 Leafs, the last 3 of which should be arriving next week in the fleet before they arrive and need to be in fast rotation. So anyway, that's something that's on our mind that is there. Gabi, I mean, well, I left everything out. Do you remember what else we brainstormed but didn't write down that we were going to share?
Not really. I mean, you can talk about Smith, but I think that's fine. The PV is fine. We had a
It's
little,
fine.
it's
Yeah.
fine. So I don't think it's really that important. I do think there's like one other thing, but I don't remember either. Yeah, sorry.
Uh, I guess that the update on, kind of our biggest decarbonization project is Leeds Elementary. The boilers are in place. As soon as school is out, we'll actually do the gas piping work because for that one you actually want it pretty vacant. And Prices are a little higher than it, well, we did our planning in 2024 and then we got a trade war. And so we are working on how to get some of this equipment that we absolutely need because there is no steam boiler anymore. So one way or another, we're going to complete the project. But we're a little shy on budget. I guess that's the news from there. So unless anyone has anything to comment or to share, we can gavel this meeting closed.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, sorry.
I
Someone-
was curious, we voted in previous meetings not too long ago to pay for certain repairs at some of the solar installations. Have those been completed?
Yes, right? Gabi, yeah, all of those. Yeah, those have been completed. Everything was up.
Yeah, both Florence and Smith Folk, the solar is fine. I was gonna say that earlier that we thought Smith Folk was not working, but it turns out it's fine. It just went offline on purpose to I can't remember what Tim was saying, but it's fine. It's working. Yeah, and everything's good with solar. Yeah.
Okay, so someone moved to adjourn.
I did.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so I guess I'll call the roll. Councilor Elkins,
Yes.
Councilor Clemmer,
Yes.
Carolyn Mish,
Yes.
Louis Hasbrook,
Yes.
Eric Winkler,
Favor.
Rich Perslidi,
Yes.
Rachel Flynn-Kasuba.
Yes.
Me, yes. All right, thank you guys very much. See you next month.